Number 50. Psalms that read like those of the Bible were written by a pharaoh, Amenophis IV, better known as Akhenaten, the heretic king, 1300 BC, or more than 400 years before David was born. Akhenaten, who was the father of Tutankhamen, was extremely Negro in type. He is called the most remarkable of the pharaohs. Number 51. Ethiopians, that is, Negroes, gave to the world the first idea of right and wrong and thus laid the basis of religion and of all true culture and civilization. The earliest exposition of this yet found is in the so-called Memphite drama, which is known only through a copy on a slab of basalt made by order of an Ethiopian king in 700 BC. Number 52. There were 3 African popes of Rome: Victor from 189 to 199 AD, Melchiades from 311 to 312, and Saint Gelasius 496 AD. It was Melchiades who led Christianity to final triumph against the Roman Empire. Number 53. The celestial saint of Germany is Saint Maurice, a pure Negro. While in command of a Roman legion in Gaul, Switzerland, in 287 AD, he refused to attack the Christians when ordered to do so by the Emperor Maximian Herculius, for which he was killed. His picture is in many German cathedrals and museums, sometimes with the German eagle on his head. Recent pictures of Hitler, nearly 1700 years later, show Hitler also with the same emblem on his head. Rulers, number 54. On November 15, 218 BC, Hannibal, a full-blooded Negro marching through conquered territory in Spain and France, performed the astounding feat of crossing the Alps. With only 26,000 of his original force of 82,000 men remaining, he defeated Rome, the mightiest military power of that age, who had 1,000,000 men in every battle for the next 15 years. Hannibal is the father of military strategy. His tactics are still taught in the leading military academies of the United States, England, France, Germany, and other lands. Number 55. Yusuf, a king from Upper Senegal, Africa, saved Moorish civilization in Spain in 1086. The Moors were being pushed out by the white Christians of Germanic descent. Yusuf crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with only 15,000 men, most of them pure blacks, and with 10,000 more from the Moors met the white king Alfonso IV at Zalaca. The latter had an army of 70,000, nearly 3 times as great, but Yusuf inflicted a terrific defeat on him. The flower of white knighthood was destroyed in that battle. Among those who fell later before the military prowess of Yusuf was Rodrigo Diaz de Bivar, known as the Cid and the greatest figure of the heroic age of Spain. Number 56. In 1538, Askia the Great, Emperor of Songhai, ruled an empire that stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to Lake Chad and larger than Western Europe. His capital was Timbuktu. Number 57. The First World War in history was started by Abraha, a Negro emperor and ex-slave, when he attacked Mecca, Arabia, in 569 AD. This war lasted for more than 1,000 years and stretched from France to beyond China. It brought about the fall of several great empires, one of them the latter Roman Empire, capital Constantinople, in 1453 AD. Number 58. Muley Ismail, Emperor of Morocco, whose mother was a Negro slave, had 25,000 white slaves captured on the seas or on the coasts of Europe and the British Isles to build his palace at Meknes. Muley Ismail's stables were the vastest in existence, with stalls for 12,000 horses. Muley Ishmael's ships raided the coasts of Europe for slaves until his death in 1727. Number 59. John IV, King of Portugal, a dark mulatto, was the maker of modern Brazil. Transferring his throne to Rio de Janeiro in 1808, he ruled Portugal from Brazil. This is the first and only time a European country has been ruled by an American one. Number 60. Pedro I, colored son of John IV, became first emperor of Brazil in 1822. Pedro I married the sister of Napoleon's second wife, Gloria. Pedro's daughter became Queen of Portugal and was a sister-in-law of Victoria, Queen of England. Many members of European royalty trace their ancestry to the Negro ruler John IV. Number 61. John Baptiste Bernadotte, a colored man, was the founder of the present royal family of Sweden. Enlisting as a private in Napoleon's army, he rose to be Field Marshal. In 1818, he ascended to the throne of Sweden as Charles XIV. Number 62. Getawayo, king of Zululand, South Africa, massacred an entire British army sent against him in 1879, and a few days later defeated and killed the Prince Napoleon, heir to the French throne. Getawayo taught the Europeans the skirmish line in warfare. Slavery. Number 63. The word slave was originally applied to white people. It comes from Slav, a Russian people captured by the Germans. Number 64. The first slaves held in the United States were not black, but white. They were Europeans, mostly British, who died like flies on the slave ships across. On one voyage, 1,100 perished out of 1,500. At another time, 350 out of 400. In Virginia, white servitude was for a limited period, but was sometimes extended to life. In the West Indies, particularly in the case of the Irish, it was for life. White people were sold in the United States up to 1826, 50 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Andrew Johnson, President of the United States, was a runaway and was advertised for in the newspapers. Number 65. Between 1526 and 1859, there were 33 slave revolts in the United States, one of which was that headed by Nat Turner of Virginia in 1831. With only 6 companions, Turner set out to free the 3 million slaves. The United States Marines and 2 warships were sent against him after he had killed 55 whites and captured several plantations. The Seminoles, or runaway of mixed Indian and Negro descent of Florida, fought 3 wars with the United States to preserve their freedom. Number 66. In 1670, Virginia passed a law forbidding Negroes from buying white people. This was 51 years after the Negro had arrived in chains. The same law was repeated in 1748. Free Negroes bought white people in such numbers in Louisiana that the state made a similar law in 1818. Number 67. White children were kidnapped in the British Isles at the rate of several thousands yearly in the 17th and 18th centuries and sold into slavery in America and the West Indies. Sometimes they were bootlegged and sold as Negroes. White Americans, North and South, were also kidnapped or seduced and sold as Negroes as late as 1859. One of the most celebrated cases of a white person sold as a Negro was Sally Muller, who was held in servitude in Louisiana for 26 years. Court after court ruled against her. Finally, her birth certificate was dug up in Germany, and she was freed by the Supreme Court in 1818. Number 68. Prince Abdel Rahman, a highly educated grandson of the Emperor of Timbuktu, was captured in battle and sold into slavery in America. Years later, a white doctor who had traveled in his land saw him at a Natchez, Mississippi. Rahman was freed in 1829. $4,000 was paid for the liberation of his children. Number 69. In 1860, there were 487,000 free Negroes in the United States, some of whom owned slaves. C.D. Wilson estimates that there were 6,230 Negro slaveholders. The tax returns of Charleston, South Carolina for 1860 showed 132 Negro slaveholders with 390 slaves. The Negro slaveholders, like the white ones, fought to keep their chattels in the Civil War. Number 70. The Brazilian Emancipation Proclamation of 1888 freed all the slaves on the day of promulgation. The British Emancipation of 1834, not until 4 years later, while the American Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, when issued, freed those slaves whom Abraham Lincoln had no power to free, and permitted the continued enslavement of those whom he had the power to free. Number 71. In Arabia and parts of North Africa, white persons, mostly women, are still held as slaves, as are many Negroes. Sometimes the owners of these white slaves are Negroes. Sports. Number 72. The fastest bicyclist the world has ever known was Marshall Major W. Taylor. He defeated the champions of Europe and America. His greatest feat was the winning of the 1-mile motor-paced race in 1 minute, 19 seconds. He died in 1932 at the age of 54. Number 73. The Afro-American, though but a dot in the world's population, holds, or has held, an unusually high percentage of world athletic championships. There have been 13 world boxing champions: Jack Johnson and Joe Louis, heavyweight; John Henry Lewis, light heavyweight; Tiger Flowers, middleweight; Joe Walcott, Dixie Kid; Jack Thompson, welterweight; Henry Armstrong, 3 titles, welterweight, lighterweight, and bantamweight; Joe Gans, lightweight; George Dixon, 2 titles, bantamweight and featherweight. Negroes have held 10 Olympic titles: DeHart Hubbard, broad jump, 1924; Eddie Tolan, 2 titles, 100 meters and 200 meters, 1932; Ed Gordon, broad jump, 1932; Cornelius Johnson, high jump, 1936; Jesse Owens, 3 titles, 102 meters and broad jump, in 1936; John Woodruff, 800 meters, 1936; Archie Williams, 400 meters, in 1936. National and university titles and world record-breaking titles in sports have been held by the hundreds. Of 12 intercollegiate championships competed for on June 1, 1940, Negroes won 8. Warfare and commanders. Number 74. The Rock of Gibraltar, the symbol of stability, is named after a Negro ex-slave. It is a corruption of Gabal Tariq, or the Mountain of Tariq. Tariq, who was a Moor, captured the rock, which was then called Calpe, in 711 AD. Later, he conquered southern Spain. Tariq's countrymen thereafter ruled Spain for 700 years. Number 75. Abraham Hannibal, captured as a slave in Africa, was adopted by Peter the Great as his son and taught military engineering. Later, Hannibal became tutor to the heir to the throne and commander-in-chief of the Russian army. He died in 1782 at the age of 90, owning vast estates and 2,000 white slaves. Number 76. Toussaint Louverture and his great mulatto rival, General Rigaud, were both thrown into the same dungeon in France by Napoleon in 1802. Later, at St. Helena, Napoleon declared that the imprisonment of Toussaint was a grave political error. Number 77. Toussaint Louverture had planned after Haiti was freed to go to Dahomey, West Africa, and use it as a base from which to fight the slave trade. For this purpose, he saved 6 million gold francs, equivalent to that sum in dollars now, which he entrusted to Stéphane Girard, an American ship captain. After the treacherous capture of Toussaint, Girard would not turn over this money to Toussaint's family. During his 9 months' imprisonment, Toussaint was tormented by Napoleon's agents to reveal the hiding place of the money. Later, Girard, a Frenchman by birth, became the richest American of his day. He left millions on his death in 1831 for the founding of Girard College in Philadelphia, stipulating that it should be for whites only. He also gave money to buy coal for the poor of Philadelphia with the same provision. Number 78. Jean-Francois, leader of the Haitian blacks in 1791, an ex-slave and once superior officer of Toussaint Louverture, rose to be a grandee of Spain. This gave him the privilege of calling the King of Spain cousin and wearing his hat in the royal presence. He was a favorite at the court of Madrid. Number 79. Napoleon had 12 West Indian Negro generals who served in France, namely, and I will try and pronounce these names to the best of my ability, General Alexander Dumas, once Napoleon's superior officer, André Rigaud, Marshal Besse, B. Lavelle, Antoine Clauelate, J.B. Bellay, Magloire Pelage, Alex Pétion, A. Chanlatte, Barthélemy Valate, and Etienne Vimentor. Number 80. Mohammed Ahmed, called the Mahdi, an ex-waiter of the Sudan, defeated every army that England sent against him, one of which was 11,000 strong. At his death in 1885, he had carved out for himself an empire in Africa, 1,600 miles long and 700 miles wide. Among those killed by the Mahdi was the famous English general, Chinese Gordon. Number 81. One of the most daring leaders of the Filipinos against the American troops in the Philippines in 1899 was an American Negro deserter named Fagan. A short story based on his life by Rowland Thomas, noted American writer, won first prize of $10,000 in a nationwide contest in 1914. Number 82. General A. Dodds, a Senegalese, was France's best-known soldier prior to the First World War. In 1901, as the senior general, he commanded for a brief time the Allied Army, white Americans, Germans, British, French, and Japanese against the Boxers in China. The Germans, unable to tolerate that, hurriedly sent out a field marshal. Number 83. Captain of the Navy, S.H. Mortonall, an unmixed Negro, commanded the air defenses of Paris from 1916 to 1918 with 205 planes and 10,000 white men under him. It was he who located and destroyed the big Berthos that used to bombard Paris from a distance of 60 to 80 miles. Number 84. The leader of the last successful Cuban revolt in 1933 was Fulgencio Batista, a Negro sergeant from Oriente Province who was later president of the Republic. Warfare, men. Number 85. The United States had 7 big wars, exclusive of Indian ones. The Negro has distinguished himself in all of them. In the last war, France awarded the Croix de Guerre to 4 whole Negro regiments, the 369th, the 370th, 371st, and 372nd, as well as the 1st Battalion of the 367th. 60 Negro officers and 350 non-commissioned officers and men were decorated for valor. 41 Negroes have received the Congressional Medal of Honor for bravery. Number 86. In the American Civil War, the Negro played a role similar to that of America in the last World War. That is, both provided a balance of power that brought victory to one side. Without the aid of the Negro, there might have been no United States now. Abraham Lincoln said 4 times that without the Negro it would be impossible for the North to win. This statement is all the more striking since Lincoln, in response to popular prejudice, steadfastly refused at first to employ Negro troops, though the South was doing so. Instead, he wanted to ship the Negroes away, and in 1862 had Congress to vote $600,000 to send the first installment to the Le Devachi in Haiti. The colony ended in disastrous failure, and Lincoln sent a ship for the surviving Negro deportees. Number 87. 178,975 Negro soldiers fought in the Union Army between 1861 and 1865. There were 161 Negro regiments as followed: 141 infantry, 7 cavalry, 12 heavy artillery, and 1 light artillery. The total number of Negroes aiding the Union Army was perhaps twice that number. Number 88. The number of free Negroes in the United States who fought to perpetuate slavery is not exactly known, but there must have been thousands. In June of 1861, Tennessee began to recruit Negroes between the ages of 18 and 50. South Carolina did the same in 1862. In a review of 28,000 Confederate troops held at New Orleans on November 23, 1861, 7 months after the outbreak of war, there was 1 regiment of 1,400 free Negroes. Preston Roberts, a Negro, was unofficial quartermaster of General Nathaniel Forrest. He was given the Cross of Honor, the highest Confederate medal, and until his death in 1910 was treated in all respects like a white man in the South. Number 89. The national hero of Buenos Aires, now the city of Buenos Aires, was Antonio Ruiz, el Negro Falucho, who died rather than let the rebels pull down the flag of Buenos Aires and hoist that of Spain on the night of February the 3rd, 1810. A magnificent monument stands to his honor in that city. Number 90. The first 2 Americans to be decorated by France in the First World War were Henry Johnson and Needham Roberts, both Negroes. Johnson killed 4 Germans and wounded 28 others single-handed. Miscellaneous. Number 91. The most ancient names for so-called black people are Nehesu, or Nubian, Ethiopian, and Moor from ancient Egypt, and Negro or Negrita from West Africa. All the above are native African words. Negro is probably the oldest, as the Negritos are the oldest known branch of the human race. Negro comes from the river Niger. Niger found its way into Latin, and since the people from that region were dark-skinned, Niger or Nigra or Negrum came to mean black. Negro, Negrito, or Negrita means the people of the great river. Black and colored, like white, are, on the other hand, European words. Ethiopian and Moor were popularly used to describe the so-called blacks until 1500. Shakespeare uses Negro only once and uses it synonymously with Moor. Africa comes from the ancient Egyptian Afrika or Kafrika, the land of the Kafir. Number 92. The English word admiral and the French equivalent admiral were adopted as the result of the great admiration held for the Negroid sea rovers who used to scour the coasts of Europe for slaves as late as the 19th century. It comes from Amir al-Bahr, Lord of the Seas, the commander of the sea rovers. The principal port of the latter was Salé, Morocco. A United States squadron under Commodore Decatur went to Africa to free the white Americans held there as slaves. Number 93. Ex-Kaiser Wilhelm II had a Negro uncle by adoption. His grandfather, Wilhelm I, adopted a Negro boy given him by an African explorer as his son. Henry Noel, as he was called, grew up in the royal palace and was an officer in the German army. Number 95. Tony Simpson, a humble Louisiana Negro posing as Prince Antonio Apache of Arizona, became the social lion of the elite of New York and Philadelphia in 1903. Among those who feted him in their drawing rooms or in the Golden Horseshoe at the Metropolitan Opera were Mrs. John Jacob Astor, Mrs. Howard Gold, and Mrs. John R. Drexel. Even President Theodore Roosevelt was taken in. The latter consulted Prince Apache several times on Indian affairs at the White House. The prince was tall and imposing, dressed like a Beau Brummel, and had the manners of a Chesterfield. He used to wear a big wig attached to a tuft of his own woolly hair. Number 96. After his famous speech at the Atlanta Exposition in 1895, Booker T. Washington refused an offer of $50,000 for a series of lectures because it would interrupt his work at Tuskegee, which was bringing him much less. Number 97. Haywood Shepard, a free Negro, was the first person killed by John Brown's party of white and Negro raiders at Harper's Ferry in their efforts to free the slaves in 1859. Shepard, while running off to arouse the white people, was shot dead in his tracks. Number 98. The blacks, like the whites, have been struggling for thousands of years to change their hair from its natural form. Negroes arranged their hair with hot irons in Egypt more than 5,000 years ago. Number 99. An American Negro has 20 chances to a white American's ones of reaching 100 years and over. And last but not least, the final fact, number 100. Since 1460 AD or earlier, the Negroes of Seville, Spain, had been wearing in the religious procession on the feast of Corpus Christi a white robe and hood, strikingly like that used by the Ku Klux Klan, which originated 428 years later.